So don't think that just because you're going to drop off your company's health insurance that you have no options. You've got options. It could cost you a little bit more, or in our case with MediShare, it was a good bit less.
It's time for the My Retirement Clarity Podcast with Lee Perkins, financial planner and president of J.L. Perkins Wealth Management. Get ready for a good dose of inspiration, simplicity, implementation, and of course, clarity on how to successfully prepare for retirement and grow and preserve your wealth. Here's Ben George with Lee Perkins.
Welcome into My Retirement Clarity. I'm Ben George. He's Lee Perkins, owner and financial advisor at J.L. Perkins Wealth Management. And we're talking about this Great Resignation, this movement that's really kind of taken off the last couple of years with the pandemic, really forcing people to kind of rethink where they are within their career, where they are within their life, right? Do I want to make different changes to my life? Do I want to go a different direction? Do I want to retire early? A lot of these questions are popping up. And Lee, I think this is just, we talk about a lot of the fallout and a lot of the things that have changed because of the pandemic. And this is one very, very clear example of that. Yeah,
it reminds me a lot of when college kids will graduate from college and you're like, all right, what are you going to do? And they're like, I'm going to take a year off. And they go out west, they might work at a ski lodge or something like that, give ski lessons or something like that, where they sort of find themselves. And so that's kind of happening a little bit here with some folks, as they just are like, hey, you know what, I'm going to take some time off and we'll see what happens. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting phenomenon that's going on right now.
Well, we found a Forbes article that we wanted to kind of highlight and talk about a little bit and kind of really hone in on a few of the key takeaways from it. It's about the Great Resignation and how it could impact you or a loved one's retirement. So that's what we want to kind of focus on today. And we're going to go through that along with a mailbag question or two towards the end of the show. If you want to talk with Lee, the best thing to do is visit that website, talkwithlee.com. You can schedule a meeting right there and get on this calendar if you want to talk about, some of these issues we discussed today, or if you're thinking about maybe retiring early because of the way things have changed during the pandemic. It's a great time to talk with him. So talkwithlee.com, and also you can find us online as well at myretirementclarity.com. So Lee, before we got to get started, got to congratulate you on your Bulldogs too before we fully jump into this. I know it was a great start to 2022 for you, and I know a lot of your clients too.
Yeah, it has been a long time coming. It really has. And I know you're an Alabama fan, so I didn't know if it would be something that you'd bring up on today's show. So I do appreciate it. You guys have had just a phenomenal run. I don't think that run is over. As long as Saban is there, y'all are always going to be in the mix. But man, it's like we always say, it's great to be a Georgia Bulldog right now. Definitely a fantastic game.
It was a heck of a team this year that the Georgia put together. And I knew it from when the SEC championship rolled around. I knew, even if Alabama won that game, it was going to be tough to beat. It's hard to beat great teams twice, right? And I think that's what Georgia had this year.
Yeah, it really is. And so I wasn't a gloom and doomer after Alabama drilled us in the SEC championship, but I had my doubts because Saban does just great halftime adjustments, and he's had Kirby's number. But boy, it was a wonderful night. Wonderful night.
Well, I'm sure you and many of your clients enjoyed it, so congratulations again to you on that.
Thank you.
All right, let's jump into the Great Resignation here. So this Forbes article that came out, there's a ton of workers right now that are retiring early or taking a break from work as they change career paths, and this has been called the Great Resignation. You probably have heard of it. If you haven't, you might become more aware of it as it's being talked about more and more. But we want to talk about this Forbes article, which we're going to put in the show notes too. So if you want to read through it yourself, we'll put it there. But we want to explore a lot of the impacts on retirement planning, really across different age groups in the wake of this massive workplace shift that's underway. So a couple key points here that we want to highlight first before we jump into this, Lee. So 4.2 million people quit their jobs in October of 2021. And right now it's unknown just how long people are going to stay out of work, which that number to me, and I don't track those numbers month to month, but that number seems really, really large.
Yeah, it's a big number. And I had a good number of folks retire the end of 2021, really the last quarter. I'm trying to think. I'm not sure I had any change careers. I did have a few folks that retired from their full-time career that they've been at for, 25, 30, 35 years, and then take part-time jobs. Not really because they needed the money, but more because they just wanted to dump the stress and get that stress off their plate. I would say a majority of my clients who retired over the last 3 months of 2021 were really just sort of ready for that next phase of their lives. They're ready to start doing whatever it was that they've been dreaming about over the last few years. Most of those folks are sort of planning some nice trips, since travel has been limited a little bit the last few years. Some are planning to spend some extended period of times visiting their kids and grandkids who are out of town. But I'll tell you this, man, I did have a lot of people tell me that they were tired of working from home. They really missed the interaction with coworkers. They just said it wasn't the same. They liked the freedom from of working at home, but they missed that social interaction. And I thought that was a pretty interesting thing coming out of that. So yeah, I mean, people like being around other people. Not everybody. There's some certainly coworkers that people don't want to be around, but pretty interesting.
Yeah, in my ideal world, I hope this moves us more in a direction of work-life balance to where, you're able to work from home when you need to, but also the office is there to interact and to work directly with people face to face. But you have more of a mix of the two. Like, that's what I hope comes out of all this, right, afterwards.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're going to see. I don't think people are going to just want to work at home all the time. I think people can be productive working from home, but boy, and it's all about happiness. This whole Great Resignation is about finding out what makes you happy. And I think that's what we'll see. And so that work-life balance is absolutely going to be critical going forward.
All right, let's talk about some of these takeaways here, Lee, and I'd like to get your thoughts on these. So the first takeaway from this article is that taking a break from Social Security could cut into your long-term benefits. Since you won't be working for a period of time, you won't be paying into Social Security, and depending on how long you're out of work, it's going to impact that 10-year minimum work history. So there's a lot to think about with this, right?
Yeah, there is, but I really don't think it's that big of a deal.
Okay.
Most of the people that we work with have been, they've been working way more than 10 years. So taking some time off is not really going to jeopardize their eligibility for Social Security. And honestly, if somebody taking off some time, brings in a lower year of earnings, I don't think it's going to make a significant difference. The 35 years of earnings it's only one part of your Social Security calculation. And honestly, that time away from work is probably going to be way more valuable than just a minor difference in your Social Security. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a factor. I mean, it could be a $10 a month difference or $20 a month difference. So yeah, if you put that in a calculator and put it out 30 years, it's significant dollars, but you can eat out one less time per month and probably have more of an impact than messing up 1 year of your Social Security. So I don't think Social Security is a huge deal.
If someone's thinking about maybe staying out of work for longer than a year, maybe a couple of years, is there a time when you're like, okay, maybe rethink how long you want to stay out?
Well, I just think it's whatever time you need.
Okay.
Some people are in a better position financially to take a little more time off, and I think that's great. What you don't want to do is put your family in a financial bind or go backwards in your overall retirement planning by not doing anything. But if you can afford it, take the time off. And if you can't, then it's probably going to be time to go get another job doing something that you're happier doing. So yeah, I mean, take whatever time you need, but you got to count the financial cost of not contributing to a 401k or doing whatever it is that you need to do. So yeah, just take that time for you.
Well, obviously when you decide to step away from work, you're going to be relying quite a bit on your 401k accounts. And there's a couple takeaways here from that. And the first one, and there's a shocking stat here, that 30% of people who have at least $50,000 in their retirement accounts took out a 401k loan in 2020. And the big takeaway here is that the 401k is not a rainy day fund, right, Lee?
Exactly. But it does happen. And I would say, most of my clients are a little more established than a lot of folks, as Ben. My clients, a majority of them are either retired or almost retired. I don't think I had anybody. I'm trying to think. I don't think I had anybody who was still working take a loan from their 401k this past year in 2021. Now, it certainly happened before, but I don't think it happened this past year. But I've seen people take 401k loans in situations that I would never recommend. For instance, I would never take a loan from my 401k to remodel a kitchen or a bathroom. But that seems to be pretty common nowadays. And I think COVID has been great for the remodeling industry. People have been cooped up in their houses more than ever, and they're bothered by that outdated countertop. And so a new countertop leads to a new backsplash, which leads to new cabinets. Well, now the floor doesn't match. It's kind of like the cabinet bone connected to the countertop bone, the countertop bone connected to the refrigerator. And, if you're doing all that, all of a sudden you wind up with a, $40,000 or $50,000 401k loan that's going to take you 3 or 4 years to pay back. And so to me, that is absolutely not a reason to take a 401k loan. Short of a medical emergency, I don't know of a good reason to take a loan from your 401k. If you need something, save up for it. That's what your savings is for. And a 401k or a 403b, that is not a savings account to be used for stuff while you're still working. I used to know a guy who always said he was going to take money out of his savings anytime he would travel. And what I learned a bunch of years later is that when he was referring to his savings, he was talking about his 401k and not an actual savings account. So he took a 401k loan for vacation almost every single year. And that's just a bad plan. Hey folks, Lee Perkins here. If you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, you know how much I hate taxes, and I know you probably do too. Our politicians are completely out of control. Their spending is off the chart, and you've got to be prepared for increasing taxes in the future. So we've written a book called Diffuse: 7 Steps to Protecting Your 401k or IRA from the Ticking Tax Time Bomb. You're going to want to grab a copy of this book and learn how you can protect yourself. Then you'll have to decide if you want to take action right now or if you'd rather wait until the IRS changes the rules of the game. Either way, the choice is yours. To get a free copy of the book, just text the word diffuse to 478-475-2050. That's DEFUSE to 478-475-2050. And we'll send you a free copy. Thanks again for listening. Now back to the show.
The other takeaway here is that your 401k, if you're leaving work, if you're leaving an employer, the typical advice is not leaving your 401k with an old employer, but you should maybe be taking it with you as you move on. What are some things you need to be considering here, Lee, as you leave your old employer and what to do with that 401k?
Yeah, in my opinion, and I hadn't changed on this, when you leave your company, your money should leave with you. This article in Forbes that we've referenced, they estimate that 1 million 401ks are forgotten every year. So think about that. 1 million accounts just forgotten. And I believe it because I meet with people all the time that tell me as we're doing an inventory of their assets, they think they've got an old account, but they hadn't gotten a statement in years. And, if you've moved and didn't do a change of address or mail's not forwarded, those things can be forgotten and these accounts can add up. So when you leave your job, I would rather you roll that money into an IRA that you manage and you take care of, or, if you've got an advisor, roll it into an IRA, let an advisor handle it. Or you can actually roll that 401k into a new 401k at your new job if you get a new job. And certainly there are pros and cons to each one of these options. So make sure you do your homework if you're not working, with a professional advisor.
All right. So a few things to think about with your 401k. The last one here, and I think this kind of sums up the entire conversation in this article, plus like the bigger picture. But, this Great Resignation movement, it seems like it's perfect for people that have always dreamed about early retirement. But it's important that you think through any decisions that you make because there are still a ton of challenges that you need to think through and make sure you have a plan for.
Yeah. And a lot of times, it really comes down to income. And some people are like, well, if I'm going to go out early, but I'm not old enough to qualify for Social Security, what do I do? Well, for a lot of people, it's not that big of a deal, but you do need to be able to fill the income gap using the money that you saved. And this could be retirement savings or regular savings or whatever you've got. And again, if you don't have enough to fill that income gap for a couple of years, you may need to work a little bit longer, or you may need to, continue to work, put aside a little bit more in retirement. I would say probably one of the bigger concerns for people who are considering retiring earlier is, healthcare, what to do if they retire early enough to where they can't carry that health insurance into retirement. So sometimes there's a gap until they're eligible for Medicare. Certainly your options are you can go and buy a private policy if you're not eligible for Medicare yet, or you could also look at one of the Christian sharing ministries like MediShare, and there are probably 4 or 5 other ones, not Medicare, but MediShare. My family's actually done this for probably the last 5 or 7 years, and it's worked out pretty well for us. It's not for everybody, but that's certainly worth looking into. So don't think that just because you're going to drop off your company's health insurance that you have no options. You've got options. It could cost you a little bit more, or in our case with MediShare, it was a good bit less. And I would say maybe, Ben, one other thing, taxes are something that people will overlook in retirement early on, as they're kind of doing some of the pre-planning for retirement. And I'm not talking about they overlook paying them. It's just a little bit of a difference, because while they're working, those taxes are withheld from their paycheck. And then once they're in retirement, they're making distributions from their assets. They've got to determine what kind of taxes they're going to owe on those distributions. And really, it's different for everybody because of the age and all those kind of things. But make sure that you've got a game plan on taxes. So really kind of a lot to figure out when you're considering retiring early.
And it might be a decision that works out for you, and it might be something that you're able to do. But again, you want to sit down and work with an advisor to work through everything and make sure you have a plan in place. The last thing you want to do, Lee, is step away from work early, then a couple of years later go, maybe I need to go back and put a couple more years in.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. Don't wait to plan until after you've retired. Make sure you start your planning early. I always challenge people to look at things at least a year before they're planning on retiring, and start putting the plan together and make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row. And it's way more than just looking at your retirement account. That, unfortunately, that's what most people zoom in on, is the amount of money that they've got saved, and they think, is this enough to retire on? But there's way more involved than just what your 401k balance is.
All right, if you want to discuss these things, talkwithlee.com is the easiest way to get on Lee's calendar, schedule a meeting with him there. And you can also visit myretirementclarity.com to listen to this podcast again, or listen to any of the shows that we put up there. Let somebody know that's considering too about maybe leaving work early, or is thinking about joining this Great Resignation movement. Point them to this episode as well. Share it with them, and let them listen through it and see if any of their questions or concerns get answered as well. All right, let's get to a mailbag question before we close out this show, Lee. We have one that came in from Laura in Macon today. And she said, I'm 56 and I've been working at the same company for 32 years. I'm so tired of being here and I want to retire, but I'm still a few years away from being able to take money out of my retirement accounts. So am I just stuck here for a while?
Laura, I've got great news for you. And a lot of people aren't aware of this, but if you're working at a company, and as long as you retire in the year that you turn 55 or later, and you've got a 401k, you can actually withdraw from that 401k without paying a 10% penalty at your age at 56. So a lot of people aren't aware of it. They think they have to wait till age 59 and a half to start taking from their 401k, and that's simply not the case. You can Google that, and you will prove me right there. But there's a lot of moving pieces to it, and you got to make sure you're very careful on things. So if you're not working with an advisor, feel free to give me a shout, and I'll help you walk through the logistics of this. But yes, you are not stuck, if that is a good way for me to answer that question. You've got the freedom now. If you're financially ready, you could go ahead and retire and start pulling from that retirement account.
Yeah, that's one thing I learned from listening to you, Lee, doing this podcast, is that a lot of times people are in better shape too than they realize if they haven't actually sat down with an advisor and gone through things. So who knows, Laura, that could be your case as well. But even if it's not, you can work through a plan to get you to where you want to be sooner than later. Nobody wants to feel stuck in their job, for sure. And we do appreciate it. I know you're not alone in that question, Laura. All right, Lee, that's going to do it for this episode of My Retirement Clarity. Very good conversation on the Great Resignation. Again, I encourage anyone that's thinking about stepping away from work early or taking a break. Before you do that, just make sure you have a plan in place. And you can always start with talkwithlee.com and schedule a time with Lee to sit down over at J.L. Perkins Wealth Management and start talking through some of the decisions and issues that need to be addressed before you do so. Lee, as always, thanks for your time, and congratulations again on your Bulldogs.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it.
Investment advisory services are offered by J.L. Perkins Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor and insurance agency. Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice. Always consult with a qualified tax, legal, or investment professional before taking any action.